It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon. The sun is shining outside. But instead of, actually enjoying your weekend, you've just spent the last 4 straight hours hunched over your laptop screen. You're deep down the rabbit hole researching some new breakout tech stock. You're pulling up PE ratios, digging through dense earnings transcripts, and you are absolutely determined to beat the market average. Look, it's a super relatable scenario. We all want that edge. We all want to be the genius who spots the next big thing before everyone else does. But what if I told you that all that intense effort, literally all of that meticulous weekend research, might actually be working against you in a mathematically massive way? In this explainer, we're going to dive deep into the real math of market extremes and uncover the hidden numbers that actually drive true wealth creation. So think about this. What if your weekend stock research is actually costing you a literal house? I know, that sounds utterly absurd at first glance. No way, right? It directly challenges our egos as investors. We're totally wired to believe that if we just work harder, put in the extra hours, and meticulously pick the exact right individual stocks, we're naturally going to build superior long-term wealth. Hard work equals better results. Isn't that how it goes? Well, today we're going to use the price of a house to completely shatter that illusion. Because the raw data suggests that your active stock picking isn't building you a mansion, it might actually be taking one away from you. Okay, let's dive right into this with Section 1, the 96% garbage rule. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why the traditional approach to stock picking is just fundamentally flawed. We have to look at a pretty groundbreaking 2018 study by a researcher named Henrik Bessembinder out of Arizona State University. He looked at the entire historical record of wealth creation in the stock market, and the results are, well, they're shocking. 96%. Mathematically speaking, 96% of all stocks ever created throughout history are just functionally mediocre. What does that actually mean in real life? It means that over their entire lifespans, 96 out of every 100 companies only managed to match the financial return of a super safe, incredibly boring one-month government bond. Just think about that for a second. All of the extreme risk you take by holding single companies, the nerve-wracking volatility, sweating over earnings misses, and 96% of the time, those companies give you the exact same wealth creation as if you just parked your cash in a basic government bond. Literally only a tiny sliver, just 4% of companies, represent the extraordinary heavy hitters that step up and create all of the net wealth in the stock market. So this brings us face to face with an absolutely critical financial concept, positive skew. Positive skew is a specific market condition where a spectacularly tiny number of extreme winners end up driving literally all of the overall market returns. You see, the stock market isn't some nice, normal, symmetrical bell curve where everything just kind of averages out. No, it is heavily, heavily skewed by a few colossal giants. Now, apply this mathematical reality to how a typical retail investor operates. You've probably got a portfolio of what, maybe 10 or 12 stocks? Because of this extreme positive skew, the mathematical odds of you successfully handpicking those specific 4% wealth creators and actually getting them into your tiny 12-stock portfolio are catastrophically low. It's basically like throwing darts at a giant board where 96% of the targets give you absolutely zero real reward. Moving on to Section 2, let's look at Jake versus Marcus. Let's map all this heavy academic math onto a really relatable 30-year comparison. We're going to follow the financial lives of two very different types of investors just to see how this extreme market math impacts actual human beings over decades. So first up, we have Jake. Jake is your classic, active, passionate stock picker. He's frenetic, right? He's the guy burning his weekends doing intense research. And here's the thing. Jake actually manages to pick a few of those individual extreme winners. He spots a company like NVIDIA super early on, and when it surges in value, Jake feels like an absolute genius. His strategy is highly active, it's emotional, and frankly, it's pretty exciting. Now contrast him with Marcus. Marcus employs a strategy that requires literally zero effort. He simply buys a broad, incredibly boring market index fund, and then he does nothing. Seriously, absolutely nothing. No weekend research, no fancy trades, he just passively holds the whole market. Well, what's really fascinating is the undeniable result when the dust finally settles 3 decades later. After 30 years of investing, Jake had his huge adrenaline-pumping wins. He definitely felt like the smartest guy at dinner parties. But mathematically, Jake's perceived winning active strategy actually leaves him $615,000 behind Marcus. Let the gravity of that number fully sink in for a second. $615,000. We're not talking about a marginal little difference here. That is the exact price of a fully paid-off home. Despite all of his intense effort, Jake actively worked his way right out of a free house, while our incredibly boring friend Marcus did absolutely nothing and ended up vastly wealthier. So how does that happen? Let's get into Section 3, the real math of losing. You're probably sitting there wondering, how on earth can a guy like Jake, who is literally holding massive, extreme 4% winners like NVIDIA in his portfolio, end up losing so unbelievably badly to the boring market average? Well, it really comes down to three major hidden factors that retail investors almost always ignore. First up is tax drag. Because Jake is an active investor, he's constantly trading. He's selling losers to cut his losses and taking profits on winners to lock in those gains. But every single time he successfully sells a winner, boom, the government steps in. He gets hit with capital gains taxes. Bleeding out those taxes year after year over a 30-year period severely drags down the magic of compound interest. Second, we have concentration risk. Remember that tiny 12-stock portfolio? Even though Jake brilliantly picked NVIDIA, he inevitably, almost by mathematical certainty, also holds several of those 96% mediocre garbage stocks. Those duds act like a massive anchor, dragging down the overall average of his highly concentrated portfolio. And finally, number 3, the emotional scoreboard. Honestly, this is probably the most insidious factor. When retail investors open their broker jobs, what do they see? They focus entirely on those big, bright green numbers next to their one big winner. That emotional high completely blinds them to the invisible, severe penalties of tax drag and the heavy opportunity cost of their losers. The emotional scoreboard literally hides the true math of what they're losing. Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, the boring path to wealth. We really need to completely reframe our mindset around the word boring. In almost every other aspect of life, boring means you're settling, right? It means you aren't trying hard enough. But in the realm of the stock market, boring is actually the ultimate stress-free financial victory over the hyperactive stock pickers. So the crucial point is this: owning the index mathematically guarantees you own that golden 4%. It's just elegantly simple. By doing absolutely nothing, by completely ignoring the daily noise and just buying the boring index, Marcus guarantees that he captures every single one of those extreme wealth-creating companies. Marcus owns NVIDIA. He owns the next big tech giant. Actually, scratch that. He owns whatever the massive winner of the next decade is going to be, even if we don't know its name yet. He captures the total positive skew of the entire market. And crucially, he does the whole shebang without ever incurring the hidden cost of tax drag from trading and without facing the catastrophic concentration risk of accidentally missing out on the 4% entirely. This entire explainer really challenges us to look in the mirror, check our egos, and fundamentally rethink how we value our time and our capital. Think back to that beautiful weekend you spent endlessly digging through stock charts and financial reports, just hoping to outsmart a historically skewed system. Here is the final, provocative thought I want to leave you with today. Is your stock research truly building your wealth, or is it literally just taxing your future? The math of market extremes pretty much speaks for itself. Sometimes, the absolute smartest, most profitable thing you can do to secure a wealthy financial future is to stop trying to be a genius, put the research down, and just embrace the boring.